You'll have a curved strap, and it needs to rest right in the chin groove. So you need to know where the chin groove goes. This part of the horse, the throat, is the same name as the parts of the bridle. This is his throat latch area right here. Okay, so he's got a neck. And what's this part called that the mane comes out of? The crest. Okay. He's got a chest. If you look at the bones of the horse, he has got a large bone that comes this direction. And it relates to one of our bones. It's actually a scapula. It's his shoulder blade. Comes out to here, and this is called the point of his shoulder, because then he's got another bone that goes back this way, and then the bones that attach to the leg. Okay, so we've got a scapula, we've got the point of the shoulder here. We all know this from saddle fit, from saddles. What's this part of the horse called? The withers. And these are the spiny processes that stick up off of the horse's backbone, off of his thoracic vertebrae. And the reason, we talked about this last week, the reason they're so much bigger than like in a human is that this is where all the muscle attachment is for his neck. And so you really do want a horse that's got good withers. You don't want a horse that is called mutton withered, that it's got totally flat back like Katie did, because then she doesn't have a good muscle attachment for her neck, so it's not as good for her. And it's really hard to get saddled to stay on her because she's so roly-poly. So that's called mutton withered. If you see a horse like Katie did that's flat like that, you really want a horse with fairly good withers. If you have a horse, mostly thoroughbred types that have really high withers, it's a little more of a problem because then it's really hard to fit a saddle to them. But if you think about it, a thoroughbred tends to have a longer neck, so they're also going to have higher withers for all that muscle and hindquarters, the three major parts of the horse. So he's got a forearm, he has a knee, he has 4 cannon bones, which are right here. It's underneath his knee, cannon bone. This is a fetlock joint. This is called his pastern. So the fetlock is the joint. It also refers to the hairy growth that comes off that joint, which we've shaved so he doesn't have any. So it's a fetlock joint, the pastern, and if you look at your at your skeleton, the pastern is actually a couple of bones in there. So it's not one solid bone, there's a couple of bones in there. So that's the pastern. And the top of the hoof, anybody know what the very top, the actual growing part of the hoof is called?
Cornet?
Yeah, cornet. As soon as you said that, like I went blank. Cornet, okay, he's got a hoof, he's got a barrel, he's got a back. Last week we talked about another important part, especially in therapeutic riding. And this is his space right here on the horse between his ribs and his pelvis. It has no bones. So we've got a spine coming through here, the ribs are going down here, and then this is his lower back, or what we would call our lower back. It's called his coupling. And we like horses like Pepe for therapeutic riding because he is short coupled. He has a very short distance right here. And that means, do the test for Evelyn.
People jump up.
It means it's stronger. Just like tall, skinny people have weaker backs, short people have stronger backs because of this distance right here. And so in therapeutic riding, because we're not jumping, we're not doing speed events, we're not doing hills and trails, we do a lot of flat work. So that the horses we work with, if they don't have exactly good conformation in their legs, or they could have some hoof problems, they can have all kinds of problems that would make them unsuitable for jumping or speed work, they're okay for us. But the two main stressors in therapeutic riding for a horse is mental. It's the mental stress, and it's the stress on this. Pepe doesn't care at all. He's got a rump or a croup. This part of his tail, where it attaches to the horse, is called the dot. You guys finding all these parts? There's that colored one. She must have the original. Okay? He's got a great big muscle coming down here called the gaskin. So if you see the gaskin on there, it's referring to a muscle. The stifle is right here, and it's actually compares to our kneecap. He has a patella right here. And so he's got a stifle right here. This is the gaskin is the muscle. The stifle is this joint. Okay? Then he's got a hop. He's got another cannon, another fetlock, another pastern, another cornet, and more. Is the overall way the horse is put together and the details of how the horse is put together. Just like people, no horse has a perfect conformation, and different conformations are good for different events. Thoroughbreds are tall, they've got thinner bones, they've got longer legs, they're good for jumping and distance events. Quarter horses are short and stocky, they're good for speed events, sharp turns, that kind of stuff. So when you're looking at conformation, you want to be looking for the type of horse that you are going to be using. So you're going to look for something specific. Other than that, there are general conformation points that are good pretty much across the board, that are things you want to look for in any horse. The first one is called balance. And I told you that the three main parts of the horse are the forehand, the barrel, and the hindquarters. And if you start looking at proportions of the horse, his forehand, the distance from here, should be almost equal to the distance to his barrel, which should be almost equal to his hindquarters. So you can divide the horse in thirds, and the three parts should be about the same length, about the same size. Because that means the horse has got his weight balanced. And that's going to be important for riding, because if he's got all of his weight in the front, he's not going to be able to lift. He's going to have a hard time cantering. When you ride him, you're going to feel like you're getting slammed into the ground. He's just going to have be less athletic. We have a couple of horses here. Sean, would you just pull up by the gate? We want to take a look at Patty. Her rear end, and there's nothing there compared to the rest of the size of the horse. So what would you expect when you ride her? You can predict a lot about her movement by looking at how she's built. More force going forward, and that is what you feel when you ride. She's going to feel what we call heavy on the forehand. She's going to feel like she's going downhill. She's going to have a harder time, what we call engaging the hindquarters. She's going to have a harder time balancing her weight back and reaching underneath her with her hind legs, because she doesn't have the muscling through her hindquarters. It's going to make it harder for her to do half halts, harder for her to do sharp spins. In an ideal quarter horse, you want that short, stocky look, but you want a bigger rump so the horse can balance back. He's got the muscles there. He can almost lift his forehand up. He'd be able to spin and turn and do things very quickly. She can't, because all that weight is stuck on the front of her. So she's going to have a harder time with canter departs, because for a horse to canter, he's got to set his weight back on his rump, lift his forehand up, and get his front legs organized. So she's going to have a little more harder time with that. There are things that you can do, and that we will be doing with her to help her out. We'll be doing some dressage exercises that are going to help develop her rear end. But you're never going to overcome the basic conformation, the fact that she just is not a very well balanced horse. And take a look at the other horse, Darren. Take a look at his overall balance. Sure. So what do you think about his balance? Narrower in the front. Now he is just a different body type, so he's a taller, even though actually he is a quarter horse. I bet he's got a lot of thoroughbred in him. So he's just a taller, longer boned animal. Overall balance, I think he's interesting because he looks like he's got a bigger rump than he does a forehand. Yeah. So you would expect him to be able to, which is interesting because you'd expect him to be able to balance back better to get his forehand off. Withers should equal the height of the rump to help the horse with his balance, and so the rider's not riding uphill or downhill. What does Pepe look like?
A little higher in the rump.
A little higher in the rump. And when you ride him, you kind of feel like you're, you know, when I ride him, I feel like there's no horse in front of me. You know, like it's just there's ground down there. Yeah, and so you can feel that. The other two horses are hard to see because they've got saddles on. So it's a little hard to see whether they're withers. Or not. Another really interesting dimension on horses is that their heart girth, or the depth of their barrel, should be about equal to the length of their legs for them to be balanced. So you're really looking at, for a horse, it's really got quite a bit of distance here. Should be about equal to the length of their legs. And Pepe's probably about there.
How about padding the legs, where her legs, like her front legs are
Definitely, yeah. Look at her, what's called the heart girth, the distance from the withers to the tummy. She's got a very deep heart girth and fairly short legs.
Mm-hmm.
So again, kind of a bit of a balance issue. It's not a problem for therapeutic riding. It's really not a problem for anything that we're going to do. It's just one of those things that his underline, which is his belly right here, this whole underline, is longer than his back. So can you see that distance? And in this whole thing, from here to here, is quite a bit of a, if you were to run a tape measure, that's quite a bit, sorry, Pepe, longer than from here to here. So his back is shorter than his belly. And that's what you want to look for because then you've got a stronger back. And then go look at the width of his rump. That's the widest part. And look at the way, did you guys just see what he did?
Yeah.
What a
Very,
specimen.
very.
Reminded me of Cat Baloo.
And he hasn't been drinking. So what do you think about his balance that way, width of chest compared to the width of his rump?
not
He's like, don't look at my rump.
Yeah, the front one. But the back's actually pretty small too.
Yeah.
Drastically different. It's hard to tell if it's a fish off.
You kind of got an optical illusion going on there. Yeah. I haven't looked at him in a while. I think that in general his chest is narrow compared to his rump. Line to be able to drop it from his shoulder, straight line, down through the knees and down through the toes. Okay? And then you have some different variations on that. So on your paper, what's the first variation called?
Toes out.
Okay, toes out. So, and he's a pretty good example of that. He's not. Horses are not supposed to. You know why he can do that so easily?
Why?
He shouldn't be able to do that. Okay, there is a serious conformation fault that allows him to do that funny thing. Can you guess? I mean, just think about form and function go together. What would allow him to be able to do that?
That he is thinner in the front.
He's very narrow in the front.
Narrow in the front.
It's like both of his front legs come out of the same socket. Yeah. And that allows him to cross his legs like that.
Okay.
Yeah. You're such a good. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, and he's also toed out. Not extremely. I've certainly seen worse. But can you guys see from the front that he is toed out? Okay. So he's toed out. What's the next thing on your chart?
Bow-legged.
Okay. Bow-legged. He's not bow-legged. Bow-legged would be just like in a human. You come out if his legs came out like this and then were basically bent at the knees and it came in. Okay, so he's not bow-legged. What's the next one on your paper?
Narrow-chested, toes out.
Narrow-chested
toes out.
That would be. That would be him.
On cue. What a good boy. Okay, he's narrow-chested, toed out. What else is on your chart?
Base narrow, stands close.
Okay, base narrow is when they actually have a fairly wide chest, but the forearm, as it comes out of the chest, angles this way. So he's got a wide chest, but his legs, and his hooves are close together. What would be the problem with being base narrow, or even with being narrow-chested, in terms of movement? Yeah, he can interfere. So as he walks, and especially if he's toed out and he's narrow, as he walks, he's going to do this.
Clip his
And
feet.
so, he could, it could end up being a serious problem that he's going to clip himself and cause damage to the inside of his hooves and the inside of his calf. He is almost not. That's where the knees are come together and then the legs go out like this. That's the opposite of bow-legged. It's not knee. And what else? I'm going to give this to you.
Pigeon-toed.
Okay, pigeon-toed. He's pigeon-toed. He's toed out. Okay? So as he walks, you'd expect him to clip the inside, and he's going to walk like this. A pigeon-toed horse paddles. Walks like this, and sticks his feet in. Okay, is that it for